Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Half Court Press podcast. We're one game into Nebraska's Spain exhibition trip. The Bahamas trip has not yet begun for Creighton. Joel Lorenzi, Sam McKewon here. Great Fred King profile from Joel over the weekend. Fred's going home to the Bahamas. We're going to talk about the Bahamas. We're also going to talk about the Jackson McAndrew commit that happened today. We're recording on a Tuesday. This kid could be really, really special. I think he could be one of the best recruits that Creighton's ever had, rankings-wise, by the end of this year. I think right now he's not, but he's up there.
Yeah, he's up there.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk a little bit of Nebraska basketball exhibition at the end here. They are one game into their trip to Spain. Aaron Eulis has basically been suspended. What I can tell you is that I can confirm it has nothing to do with something that happened in Spain. I asked Fred Hoiberg that 2 different times yesterday so he could not turn this into an international incident. He declined to comment, but I feel very good that it has nothing to do with what's happened in Spain. So people who have wondered about that don't have to wonder as much. But we'll get into that a little bit. I want to remind everybody, okay, so it is August 1st, right? August 1st, 2023. This is the time to get a subscription to the Omaha World-Herald. You can get 6 months for $1. Okay, so August 1st is today. This takes you through February 1st. That means you get, okay, I know Creighton fans out there are football fans. It gets you the whole Nebraska football season, plus all of signing day, plus it gets you 2/3 of the Creighton basketball season. And by then, given that Creighton basketball's non-conference schedule is nowhere near as hard as it was last year, it won't surprise me if Creighton only has 1 or 2 losses, maybe 3. So this is the time to subscribe. You're going to get all the Jays stuff. Joel's going to have plenty on them when they're in the Bahamas, but also, we're going to have preview stuff. When you go to an Elite Eight and you have the roster to do it again, we're gonna go full throttle on Creighton coverage, Creighton hoops coverage. We're not waiting until October 15th. So Joel will have all that. So subscribe. Okay, Joel, let's start with this. Jackson McAndrew commits to Creighton. 6'9" forward from Wayzata, Minnesota. That is a suburb of Minneapolis. He's moving up the rankings. So he's number 48, according to On3 in the country.
Yeah.
Top 100, according to Rivals in 247. Picks Creighton over Wisconsin, Notre Dame, and
Xavier.
What do you think of this guy, and why did he pick Creighton?
He's interesting. I back when he first got offered in, I think he's been to Creighton twice now. Had his official in February. I guess when he came in October or whatever that was, it was unofficial. But from what I understood, I think Mac coached his dad way back in the day, so that connection was there. But back when he got offered, I don't think it was super eye-opening. He's definitely got better since he got offered. I think back then, some of the write-ups you look at, he was talking about visits to UNI and schools like that, and his recruitment has completely changed. He blew up, had an explosive summer on the EYBL circuit, and he was talking about, obviously, the schools you mentioned at the end. He had interest from Duke down at the very end because he built his profile not just as a guy who's 6'9", but as one of the probably the deadliest shooters in the country. As his size, his range, this is a guy that, you ask the staff and him, when I talk to him, he's being told by the staff that they see him as a potential NBA shooter. So he's that good.
And they know because they've had him.
Yeah.
They've had NBA shooters.
For sure.
Creighton has a history of producing, elite shooters. He scored 25 points and had 9 rebounds in the state title game, which they won over Park Center, which has their own high-level recruits. During the game, Sam Decker, who's one of the better players in Wisconsin history, helped lead the Badgers to 2 Final Fours, is in London. And he tweets, the Badgers need to get this guy to get it going in the Kohl Center again. I think there was a sense that Wisconsin was way out in front for this kid at one time, and Creighton has made a late push.
Yeah.
Why Creighton? Was it? Do you think the Elite Eight run had something to do with it? Why Creighton?
From what I understand from my conversation with him, it's just a relationship with the staff and what they see him as. A lot of the time, if a player feels like, and he mentioned player development when we talked. So if a player feels like he has a ceiling in mind, and maybe that ceiling is different from what the staff envisions. That probably steers him away. But as far as I know, the vision from this staff for him is that he's such a good shooter that they're going to build on that, and that he can maybe make a professional career out of how good of a shooter he is already. And so that's something he was interested in the player development, seeing the type of recruits that Creighton has built up. And you mentioned it, like, their best recruits have come in recent years. And even still, their highest-ranked recruit was, I think, Kaluma, who was, maybe, like, hovering around top 50. So Jackson, depending on what site, might end up being the highest-ranked recruit in their history. I don't know, but clearly he agreed with both their player development and the vision they had for him.
Yeah, I think it's, again, in recruiting sites, I know that you love them, are tricky. Because sometimes what happens is there's an impression of a kid, and then that impression just sticks for a really long time.
Sure.
What I've found is it can be very hard to go down very far in the rankings. Like if you get up to 5th, you might get down to 20th, but you're rarely going to go down to 100th. There's a 2024 football player who's going to sign in the 2024 class who is not a 5-star. But he's not going to not be a 5-star, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
And so, but it's possible to move way up, and I think McAndrew could do that. He played with a point guard last year who was 5'11" with his team, and that guy did a lot of the scoring. I don't think that guy's there anymore. So there's a chance he averages 25 to 28 points a game. Then the EYBL.
Yeah.
I always have a fun way of saying that. That's the Nike circuit. The Adidas circuit is, I can't remember the name of it. And then there's the Under Armour circuit.
Yeah.
And, like, that's the order of coolness, right? Nike's the best.
Sure.
Adidas is
Depending
second.
on the year, but yeah, sure. Adidas is second, I'd say.
Under Armour is third.
Yeah.
And then there's whatever else there is.
Yeah. And no, you're right. His progression, because like I mentioned, around the time he got offered, he's sandwiching between, back when they were recruiting J.T. Thor and Junie Mobley. Junie Mobley was obviously a big deal back then. And then Trenton Flowers' recruitment, which was also another big deal. So he was sandwiched in between there as a 3-star back then. And so now you're looking at a guy who not only got better during the school year, but had an explosive summer. Anytime you're talking about Duke getting involved late, it's a good sign. So he could easily have another jump this year.
Who's the name of the other guy that got committed?
Oh, Ty Davis.
Ty Davis. Okay. So we'll see where it goes. I mean, Creighton's always going to work the transfer portal too, and they've done that quite well in this cycle. So that's basically part of the story for every single team anymore. So they're going to add probably some transfer in the offseason wants to come here. And we'll talk about Creighton as a team now. But, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that this is another Sweet 16 Elite 8 team. And I say Sweet 16 because Creighton got a great draw in the Sweet 16. They got a team, unlike, for example, Michigan State, who was probably playing as good as anybody in the country, but had to play K-State and that point guard in the Sweet 16 and lost.
Yep.
They could have went to the Final Four. Creighton got a sweetheart draw in the Sweet 16. And they beat Princeton, and then they went to the Elite 8. This could be a very easily another team that's Sweet 16 Elite 8, just without much of a heartburn. Okay, let's talk about the Bahamas trip. Anybody not available?
Not available?
Yeah, anybody's going to... Nebraska had 19,000 people not available.
No, but I think, one, Mason Miller broke his nose, I think, during a June session. Had surgery for it. I think I don't think he's back now. He's back practicing with them. Not sure how much you'll see of him out in the Bahamas. Mac made it pretty clear today that obviously they're going to get experimental. That's what these foreign trips are for. You'll probably see guys who have probably no business starting during the regular season end up starting maybe 1, even 2 games out there on a foreign trip. So you'll see some experimentation for sure. And I think you might even see he made it clear that the starters won't play as much. Maybe they play a half each game. I'm sure there'll be guys who sit out completely their last game. Like it's gonna be a lot of load management. But I think he put a lot of emphasis on the practices. That's the real value in the trip to him is the practices and moving forward, building off what they've done so far in the summer sessions. I mean, the competition I don't think is crazy out there that they're playing, and so he's not really. Well, these are his words. He said whether they win or lose isn't as important to him as the practices and what goes on there. So,
So when you say starters, Baylor Shireman, Ryan Kalkbrenner,
yeah, the clear stars, and then depending on who has the edge between Mason and Trout, maybe they're both equally spelled. So maybe one guy starts one game, one guy. I could easily see it being Trout starts one game, Mason starts another game, and Jason Green starts one game. Like I could easily see that, and a guy like Jason Green probably stands to get a lot of time out there. Same with Fred King, even though this is a guy that we're talking about. The expectation is for him to play 10 to 12 minutes a game because they want this to be a season where they could spell Kalkbrenner more and not run him into the ground like they kind of did last year. Yeah, so I don't know. Fred King probably stands to play a lot out there.
That might, the Kalkbrenner thing. I going back to it, I always kind of wondered, did he get that before the season or did he get that coming back from Hawaii?
No clue.
Yeah.
No clue at the timeline.
I wondered, like his illness or whatever that was that Kalkbrenner had.
He definitely wasn't sick before when the season started or before the season started.
Because sometimes when you do these travel things, Joel, like it affects you. And so Fred King was pressed into action there for a good chunk of the December, and then he started at Marquette, did he not? In that game, I think he did. Maybe he did. I don't know.
And you ask the doctors and the Dr. Fauci's of Twitter, they'll say that Kalkbrenner was sick during Maui because he looked like he had the suds in that one
fair.
game. So
that's fair. I think King for a backup center is really good.
Yeah.
Now, I've watched a lot of backup centers in the Big Ten, and very few of them are as good as Fred King. So, Creighton's got a nice, the backup center at Connecticut was better, yes, but
of course,
but Creighton, they have a pretty good situation there. Okay, so the players that we then expect to see more of in the Bahamas. And what did McDermott give any sort of thought process on like how Trout looked or how Jason Green looked or some of these other guys that are not reserves but they're sort of right on the line of the rotation? Not
really. More so Ashworth than anything. Just the obvious indications that we kind of going through as observers. Mentioning that Ashworth in the system is. He's a completely different player than Nembhard was, and the expectations are different. Ashworth is a guy that has played off the ball a lot of his career, and Nembhard is a guy that played on the ball since he was a kid. And so different expectations. Obviously, one is a really elite shooter. The other one was a good to fine shooter. So you just talked about the difference in expectations and fit. Nothing really on the Trout front, but I'd imagine, and I'm sure this is something they'll experiment with in the Bahamas is, some Trout at the 5 because I think that's probably what might separate him and Mason is that Mason, obviously defense was a problem for him last year, but he might have a better time sliding with, college fours versus Trout. I think as a guy with his frame and footwork as it stands probably could better defend 5s. I'm not saying he's a rim protector, but just mobility.
That's right, because not every 5 is 7'2". Sometimes your 5 is 6'9", and like Isaac Trout, like he's leaner and whatever you want to call it. How tall is the guy at Marquette? He's not.
Marquette, who's the Oso?
Yeah,
maybe 6'9", 6'10".
Yeah, so Trout could guard him for 3 possessions. I'm not saying it'll go well, but I'm saying that there does become a size where if a guy's 7'2", it's hard for a 6'10" guy even to guard that if that guy is the 7'2" guy. I'm talking about the Connecticut center. He's 7'3", 7'2".
7'2", I think.
Okay.
But I think the Trout center, and this is just, based on some whispers and mostly me assuming things. The Trout potential 5 minutes, if that was something they actually considered in season, it's more so to keep him from being a liability defending fours, I think, then he's better suited at the 5. It's just, I think it would just hurt them less if he defended 5s. I mean, you still look at also a guy that is closer to the size. That's a dude that's so skilled that, Trout still probably has problems with him.
Fred King struggled with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's more than size and anything like that. It's a feel thing. I mean, you get a guy that's just that good as a playmaker, and it becomes a feel thing. Where are you at in the gap? Where can you help? How much one-on-one are you having to defend in the post and up top on the perimeter and ball screen, stuff like that. So,
is there a player that you think might what player benefits most from this? It's probably not the 3 stars.
I'm thinking, probably a couple of the guys we talked about. Fred King is one of them because I think they want to see more from him. I got to think Lawson stands to gain a lot during this time. Josiah Dotzler is probably a name because I've heard good things about him this summer. I think he surprised a decent amount of people, and he's been better than advertised. And so this is a guy that, push comes to shove. I mean, God forbid Ashworth gets hurt or they want to spell Ashworth more. I think this is a guy that could probably play a few more minutes than we might have thought coming into the year. So
are they impressed with him defensively? Is that
I think he's just a good size guard. Can make
he's
good.
He's taller than his brother.
Sure, yeah.
People in their minds might be thinking of Josh, and Josh wasn't as tall as Josiah.
Yeah, I think he's just good decision maker, winning player. Just probably a more impactful freshman than a lot of people might have imagined. So he'll stay in the game a lot, and you'll probably see a lot of him in the Bahamas.
Lawson, that's an interesting one to me because that's the addition where you're like, what is this guy's probably not going to score the ball a lot because he's not going to really get that many opportunities to do that because they have a ton of scorers. So he's probably going to have to be the Sharif Mitchell. I'm not saying he's the same size.
He's definitely not the same defender.
I understand that. But he's going to have to be the guy that comes in and does play defense. I just don't anticipate him getting 10 shots a game.
Yeah, there are holes in his game.
Maybe 3.
There are holes in his game for sure, and I think I don't know. I think people saw the numbers on low volume, the shooting numbers. He was a good shooter on pretty low volume last year. Ended up getting less minutes at the end of the year for whatever reason. I don't know if his defense contributed to that, but
that's one of the 15 most athletic teams in the country, Memphis.
Sure.
You have to be really, really good to get on the floor for them athletically.
Yeah, especially as a freshman. So I think a lot of people are talking up, the number is granted the low volume, the shooting numbers, the size, what he could potentially do, and that he came from Memphis, and people are seeing that. It was like, oh, this is an instant high rotation piece. Creighton is going to be infinitely deeper because of that, and I think the expectations that he'll take some minutes from Farabello, but I've heard good things about Farabello in the offseason. Obviously, got to take that with a grain of salt. People probably weren't impressed with his shooting last year as a guy who came in as, was supposed to be solely a sharpshooter and good decision maker. But I don't know. Lawson still has some things to show me, I think. But he'll get that chance in the Bahamas. I mean, if Creighton is going to be as deep as people are saying, he has to be as good, if not better than advertised.
What about Brock Weiss?
I don't know about Brock Weiss.
The best name on the team.
Sure. I don't know about Brock Weiss, man. I haven't heard a ton about him, but he's getting reps.
He's third post for people who don't know.
Sure, yeah. He's getting reps, like you said, against the other bigs, and obviously is a stretch for them, and so he'll get a ton of run, I'm sure, in the Bahamas. Yeah. So.
Creighton did a really good job of adding a third post that they're probably not going to need next year, maybe even the year after. Year after they would. They did a really nice job of adding that guy late in the process. He can learn from one of the nation's best centers, Ryan Kalkbrenner, will take him under the wing. So that was a really good addition by Creighton. I think that's kind of it. I don't imagine the team. There'll be live streams of these games.
Flow Sports. It'll be on Flow Sports, yeah.
Which is great. It'll be – so Nebraska's games have no streaming at all, not even a cell phone. in the stands. They're playing in like a YMCA kind of thing with a gym. Nope, no streaming. The Nebraska women's basketball team has streaming, but it's the phone attached to a tripod moving like this.
Yeah.
Flow Sports will have a better setup. You'll actually be able. It'll look more like a basketball game that you might see on your television.
Sure.
Versus, so that's good. I mean, you'll be able to get a sense of things that way.
Yeah. And from what I understand, they'll be playing in the gym that Battle for Atlantis is played at, so they'll have some better conditions.
So they have a setup, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Battle for Atlantis is the MTE that's played there every year. Probably at this point, isn't it? Like maybe the third or fourth most prestigious MTE.
It's up there. They get good teams all the time.
They do, because it sounds like a really cool place to go.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like one
It's
of
a
the
good looking gym.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think so that's what I mean, is it's a classy, high-level setup contrasted by, and we'll now move on to Nebraska. So Nebraska is they're one game into their I can't tell you anything about what happened other than what was given to us in a press release and what Fred Hoiberg said over a Zoom call that went in and out. And if you want to talk about a joy in life, you go on a Zoom call and it's Fred. And that's what it sounded like. I mean, it was ridiculous. So that's what it was for 7 minutes. Very little to know about the game, other than Bryce Williams had a really good one. He scored 28 points in an 89-84 overtime win. Really liked Bryce as a kid, older guy, son of the leading scorer in Charlotte history. So Henry Williams was the leading scorer. He passed away 5 years ago, I think, maybe more than 5 years ago, from kidney disease. And so Bryce went to Charlotte, had a nice career there, and he wants to spend his last year basically getting Fred Hoiberg's eyeballs on a shot so he can maybe move on to a pro league. So Bryce Williams had 28 points. Cale Jacobson, who's a walk-on from Ashland Greenwood, had a nice game. C.J. Wilcher had a nice game. He had 18 points and 10 rebounds. Nebraska hit 9 of 36 from 3. Yeah. Usually these exhibition games are a three-point shooting competition because the teams that you play they don't close out. And so Nebraska had 36 opportunities to hit a three-pointer, and they made 25% of them. And what I had wrote in my preview piece was 40% is ideal, right? But you'd take 35. Nebraska has not shot 35% from three in a season. Get this, in like 15 years.
Oof.
I mean, they're usually in the 31, 32, 33 range. Like, that's kind of where they're at. And so anyway, they were frustrated by that. One of their players, Aaron Eulis, is out indefinitely. Not related, I think, to anything that's going on in Spain. Eulis used to play at Iowa. And so, I think there's concern there that he might be out for a while related to the situation. That would be one less guard they would have in the backcourt. They weren't deep there to begin with. Eulis was a plan, I don't want to be rude, D, E of who they wanted to sign at that particular position. Kirk Kriesa was the first guy. The guy that went to Oklahoma was the second guy. I can't even remember his name. Hunter Salas was the third.
Was it not Tyler Perry? The one that
Young, I think, is his last name.
Javion.
Yeah.
McCullum, was it?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Tyler Perry went to K-State.
Right.
I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. It's been a long time. It's been 3 months since he didn't pick Nebraska.
Which is 10 years in the portal. So
yeah, so they didn't get that guy. Then they tried Hunter Salas, and that didn't work out. Remember, Hunter came for the spring game back in April, and didn't go well. We're now 3 months from then. And then they tried to get somebody else too, and that didn't work. And they kicked the tires on a kid that it doesn't matter now. But anyway, Eulis was about Plan E, and now Plan E might be out. And so there's no time really to replace him. So you're going to see Cale Jacobson move into maybe more of a role. Sam Hoiberg is going to have to do more. Sam, I think, in my opinion, actually, Sam, I think, is a scholarship-worthy player. But you don't probably want to play him 38 minutes a game. And so you got to find a way to balance out the minutes so he doesn't wear down. He's not available Casey is not there. He's in Japan. Rink Mass is playing for the Netherlands. Josiah Alec probably could have played, but they decided not to have him play. And Blaze Keita, this is a real concern. Blaze Keita hurt his ankle in the Maryland game, which I think was in like late February 20th, 23rd, and he hasn't been back since. And he got surgery in the offseason. So did Josiah Alec. Alec played 1,000 minutes last year, got surgery on one of his ankles. Blaze Keita played 212 minutes last year, got surgery on one of his ankles. Alec is ready to go. Keita's nowhere near ready to go. It's a concern. And so that thing could go out for 2 or 3 months. And if Keita's not ready to go, then you basically have Rink Mast playing 35 minutes, and then they just signed this other guy, Matar Diop, who is from the NBA Academy Africa, had a big tournament down in Atlanta. I don't really know the context of that tournament. I don't think it was an EYBL tournament. He was still in high school, but he was 19, so he wasn't going to be able to go to high school anymore. So anyway, it was some kind of tournament in Atlanta, and he got some offers from it, and Nebraska was able to reel him in. And so that guy could legitimately be Nebraska's backup post. They don't. It's entirely possible, which is why they're playing other guys at the 5. So it's a little bit of a cluster's the wrong phrase, but it's just a little bit of a tough situation right now down there in Nebraska. So the team that they're playing, the team that they're putting out on the floor, maybe we don't want to see it. I don't know. It's odd to me, though. It feels like it costs 6 figures to take a trip to Europe when you're bringing 20 people, right? Like, the trip has to be at least $5,000 a person and probably 8. So if you're going to go all the way over there and you're going to spend all the money, stream the games. Charge for them. But, let your fans see.
Sure. What people will pay.
Absolutely.
People will pay for sure.
People are going to pay Flow Sports for Creighton. They will. I mean, I'm going to pay Flow Sports for Creighton. I want to watch. This is a top 10 team in the country.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. Anything else jumping out at you, Creighton-wise? I mean, you're going to have coverage of all the games.
No, nothing from the Bahamas.
Got a pick to click. That's usually in football, but
yeah, no, nothing from the Bahamas. I'm more interested in the Jackson news right now, just because I had been wondering about what the next era of Creighton would look like, and now it seems like it's rounding out pretty well. I mean, you mentioned it; they'll be in the portal or whatever, but in terms of recruits, like I think people are going to underrate this because they hate Nemhard now and they hate Kaluma, but the 2021 class set them up for as great a window as they've had since Mac has been here. And so if they could do something similar again, let's say Ty Davis, becomes a higher ranked recruit. Obviously, Jackson is a riser. If they get a third guy in there, a perimeter guy, a wing, something like that can maybe create. I know they're in on there's another kid. He's like a 3. Has basically all the Big East in his final 8 schools or whatever. But if they can get in on another high profile guy and build that class and have that be the next era, I'd be pretty confident Creighton, not just staying afloat, but remaining I guess a mainstay now. Because I was pretty concerned. I mean, I think people's expectations have changed on them year by year, but the current era is like people are gonna miss this era for sure. I mean, the way the way the cards have fallen for them is like crazy in hindsight.
It's gonna be another year of it. Incidentally, high school basketball in the Minneapolis area is really good. How do we know this? Because they have produced lottery picks in, I think, 3 of the last 5-6 years. So Chet Holmgren, obviously, was from that area.
Suggs.
And Suggs. And I think there was another one. I can't remember. And, of course, the girls' high school basketball is just as good, right? So he's playing really good teams up there. This is not, no offense to Madison, Wisconsin. This is not Madison, Wisconsin. This is not. It's
not Maine.
It's not Maine.
Yeah.
It's not, to be very honest with you.
Shout out Cooper Flag, though.
It's not even Kansas City. The basketball in Minneapolis is better.
Sure.
And I think some of that has to do with the NBA team. Like, I think you just have a better, whatever, culture of basketball in a city that has the NBA. So I think McAndrew is really, really good. And I know that Wisconsin fans are really, really pissed. This is the thing that's been the knock on Greg Gard, is he can't get these guys. And this is the guys they used to get. They don't get them anymore. And, of course, the University of Minnesota coach, I feel for him. I really like him, Ben Johnson, who used to be an assistant over here in Nebraska. I like him a lot. He can't get the local kids, including Jackson McAndrew. That's tough.
I mean, I wouldn't go to Minnesota if I was from there.
You just want to leave, get away.
I mean, yeah, of course.
It's human, right? Like we don't want to. A lot of people do not want to stick around where they grew up anymore.
I mean, well, no, Minnesota is Minnesota, so that would be my reason for not wanting to go there. But
I think until Creighton made this push, though, and I think they did. I think Creighton surged and did all the great recruiting. I think he was going to Madison, Wisconsin, which isn't any better for what you're talking about, is it?
I mean,
I like Madison.
Wisconsin, they have an okay tradition. I mean, they've had good teams in the past decade. You know what I'm saying? So it wouldn't be worse. But in fairness, from my personal standpoint, I mean, I'm from Chicago. I wouldn't have went to Illinois if I was a 4-star or something. So that's just me.
Well, you didn't go to Illinois for J school.
I didn't, and there was a reason for that.
You went to a good one.
About 200 kids from my graduating class, like 400 to 500, went to U of R. So
did they?
Yeah, so I didn't want to do Chicago all over.
So a lot of kids went there.
Oh hell yeah. But I went to Mizzou for a good reason. There's some good company up there, but yeah, there was no way I was gonna. It was basically gonna be me living in Chicago again, which I wanted something new. And I gotta imagine.
Was Mizzou your only finalist, or did you have multiple finalists?
No, I had a lot of basketball schools, and my final four, was it? It was, Kansas was in there. Surprisingly, I'm not a.
It's a good J school too.
I'm not a Kansas hater or nothing. Like, I know I went to Mizzou, but I was never. I'm not a Mizzou fan per se.
Sure.
So Mizzou, Kansas, Arizona was in there. So that was like my final three. You would have thought I was a hooper or something. I always think what could have been if I went to Arizona. That would have been cool, I think.
What would have been if you went to KU? Would have covered a national title.
Yeah, a good basketball team. No shade to Conzo Martin because I like that guy, but shit, those teams were bad.
Yeah.
Well, they did have the 1 year I was on the beat, like the full year, they were like top 10 in the country at one point. For whatever reason, that was the weirdest team I've ever covered.
The COVID year, or sort of COVID year, is that what that was?
It was the year my guy from the Pelicans won SEC Player of the Year. I'm trying to think. Herb Jones.
Okay.
It was a really weird year. I mean, that team had like Jeremiah Tillman and Drew Smith and X Pinson, who's been to like 30 schools since then. So super weird year for the SEC and all that.
Why Joel chose Missouri. All right, that is our Half Court Press podcast for this week. We'll be back next week to recap what Nebraska did that we will only find out through Morse code, and what Creighton did, which we'll be able to watch on Flow Sports.
Yeah.
For Joel, I'm Sam. Thanks.